All right, back in the studio, and I have a topic for this video that I feel like is very important to those of us with studios or that are trying to get our studios together, specifically our mic lockers. And one thing I want to talk about specifically in this video right from the beginning is match stereo pairs of mics for things like drum overheads or room mics or acoustic guitar recording. Do you need matched stereo pairs of mics? Is that more important than having a versatile mic collection with a bunch of different types of microphones? And this topic is valid whether you're just getting your first SM57 or you're ready to buy some Neumann mics. We're all thinking about what choices to make in microphones. And I have some sound examples that I want to get right into here. This is drums from my new song, and I want to listen to the drum bus, I want to listen to the broom mics, and I want to listen to the overheads because some of these mics are stereo pairs and some of them are stereo recordings but using different microphones. The overheads, I used this microphone, the United Twin 87, combined with a very different mic. What does that stereo image sound like? Am I happy with it? And for the broom mics, we used a matched stereo pair. So let's listen first to the drum bus, the full stereo picture of all the microphones. I did a 7 mic setup in this recording, and let's just listen. I wanted to stop on that floor tom hit because that floor tom fill, because those mics on overheads, like I said, they're different stereo mics. I'm using this mic, and then on the hi-hat side, this is over the floor tom, but on the hi-hat side, I'm using an Audix i5, which is a dynamic microphone. And the picture does sound different. We're going to listen specifically to the overhead mics and to the room mics, not on the bus. But I feel like that's a great sounding drum recording. I'll let you listen to it in the mix, which I've been getting great feedback on as well. But right now, let's go ahead and listen to just the overheads and see what that sounds like. Keep in mind that this is the United Twin 87 on the floor tom side of the overheads and an Audix i5 over the hi-hat side. So here we go. So as you can hear, if you're listening in headphones or on studio monitors, maybe you do have a different sound coming out of that left side than the right. I think there's definitely some more detail coming off this United Twin 87, whereas the Audix i5 has more of a aggressive sound, whereas this is more detailed. That's just what my ears are telling me, but all in all, the stereo picture sounds great to me. And even though the snare is in the middle of that image and it's two different microphones, it's still a great sound. And my theory on this has been use what I have, and I'm slowly building up my mic locker, but I have to get one microphone at a time, especially when it's good, higher priced microphones like this one. I'm getting ready to change that overhead picture a little bit. I'm going to keep this mic on the overhead on the floor tom side, but I want a ribbon in my studio. I would love to have a stereo pair, but it's going to have to be a thing where I buy one and then buy another one later. So I'm going to move that ribbon into the hi-hat position and move that Audix i5 probably to a tom mic. And as long as you can work with that image and it sounds good in your mix, do what you need to do and experiment. Now let's go over to the room mics, because I do have a stereo pair. These are small diaphragm condensers. These are the AKG P170s. Very budget microphones, but great sounding. And I feel like with room mics especially, a lot of times you're going to be compressing the hell out of them and using them to get some aggression anyway. So since it's going to be a more processed sound, you can afford to experiment and use cheaper microphones for your room mics when you're first starting out. Of course, as things grow and your studio grows, you want to get as nice of mics as you can, but I've been really happy with these AKG P170s, and this is the only stereo pair of mics I have, and I'm getting really great sounding drum recordings. Now, when you're getting way into detail on like maybe some classical recordings, or depending on what type of music you're doing, more acoustic music where the drums need a more subtle picture, I think stereo match pairs are going to be more important in this. But we're talking about rock and roll, baby, you know? And with rock and roll, you want some punch and aggression. And I heard Eric Valentine say in a video that he was listening to John Bonham. I think the song was When the Levee Breaks. And even though Glenn Johns was using a matched pair of Neumann U67s on the overheads, that the left side of the drum kit sounds very different in solo than the right side of the drum kit. The tolerances on these old microphones were sometimes widely varied, especially as the years went by. And this tells me that even with high dollar microphones back in the day, if they weren't given a perfect stereo sound, Eric Valentine said that these microphones, these Neumanns, were very different from the left side to the right side. So sometimes the differences in stereo is what makes the image interesting. And with that logic in mind, I really think that when you're starting out, you don't need stereo pairs as much for rock and roll. I think it's more important to get a variety of microphones. And then once you have a nice variety, then add another one of the same microphone to make your stereo pairs. That's what I'm doing here. I'm starting out with a versatile lineup of microphones first, and then I'm going to make some stereo pairs so I can get that more perfect image. But really for rock and roll and a lot of types of music, that stereo image, you want it to vary. That's when I record guitars, I'm doing a different sound on the left than on the right, and that's what attracts your ear and draws your ear to certain sounds in the stereo image and makes things interesting. So let's listen to these room mics. All right, so that was the stereo pair of room mics. So you can hear there that I'm using the room mics to give me some room reverb. I've also got some reverb added on there, and I'm using them compressed to give me some punch that the close mics and the overheads by themselves aren't giving me. When you add those room mics in, it's adding extra dimension to what the close mics are doing. And many times I get the best tom sound from my room mics. I want to listen to the full drum picture in the mix, but with those small diaphragm condensers as room mics, they're just adding texture and reinforcing the sound of the close mics in many cases. So I feel like you have a lot of leeway on the mics you choose for this. Like I said, I went with the stereo pair, a matched stereo pair, but experiment. Some people like a mono room mic, and you can try different things in these positions. But let's listen to that same clip, the same section of the song, the full mix. So that's the same section that I was playing the drum examples from. And I feel like in the mix, you can't tell any of those microphones are not matched pairs. And it's a great drum sound as long as you get your mic placement right and try out different combinations, do different things, and find out what's best for you in your space. Your microphone selection can be very individual and give you a different type of drum sound than other people might be getting. It's also important to note that there are no sample augmentations, no even reinforcement from samples in that. That's just my drum sound. Definitely no sample replacement either, but I don't do anything with samples, no triggers, nothing like that. I like to get my drum sound, and if it's not, usually I record my drums after I have all of the music down and then do the vocals last and the drums right in the middle, after I have the basic track laid out. And if the drum sound I get on the first or second take doesn't work with the music, I record it again, because that's why I have a studio. I want my drum sounds. Not to say that I would never use samples, but for my music, I want my drum sounds in that music. And I have the ability and the time to get it right. You know, I'm not pressured to do anything on a certain time schedule, so I do it till I get it right. And I like to experiment with microphones, with drum sounds, with everything in my studio. And when you're building your mic locker, I feel like it's a good idea, unless you have a lot of funds where you can buy stereo matched pairs of great mics. Be versatile, because depending on what you're doing, especially if you're doing a lot of instruments like I am here, I'm doing overdubs of everything, and I don't like to use like amp sims and things like that. I like to record amplifiers and analog sounds. The more variation you have in the ways you can capture this sound is going to be beneficial. All right, I do want to talk about microphones that content creators and YouTubers tend to prefer and why they usually don't use a mic like this. I have specific reasons for using this microphone, but it's not going to be the choice of most YouTubers. But before we do that, let me mention that all of the sound examples for this video are from my new song. I'll put a link in the description. It's called Didn't Get No Sleep. And go check it out. Go stream it. Go stream my other music. You can hear all the microphones in use in a mix, the full mix on the streaming platforms. Also, if you like this type of content, if you like learning about microphones and studio production techniques, if you like learning about guitar pedals and amplifiers and guitars, even documentary type videos on some of my favorite guitar players, there's one on Rupert Neve as well, hit subscribe. Hit that like button and leave me a comment. Tell me what it is about music that really gets your blood pumping. I always love to hear that, especially from newer players, what got them into music and what about music makes them passionate about it. Before I started making content on a regular basis, I was going for the easiest way to do it, and there's nothing wrong with that. YouTubers will tend to choose a microphone like a SM7B or RE20 from Electro Voice. These are great microphones for voice. A lot of times they're used on vocals for music as well because they sound a lot like a condenser microphone like this. They have great sound rejection as well. That's the main reason that YouTubers go for these microphones. Those two that I mentioned specifically are really hungry for a lot of gain. So if you're using interface preamps, you might need something like a Cloud Lifter. I have a Cloud Lifter back here. They're great for getting the gain level up for an interface. If you can't afford one of these nicer preamps, get you a Cloud Lifter if you plan on making some content and using an SM7B or RE20. The reason I use this large diaphragm condenser, this is a United Studio Technologies Twin 87. I love the naturalness of this microphone and the top end response. It's also my vocal microphone for my music. Right now, I have an ever-growing mic locker, and I'm always trying out new things, putting new microphones in the studio. But it's a lot more work with this microphone because there is a lot less rejection. If someone drives by on a motorcycle, or a semi goes by, or my son's playing in the next room, even quietly, it picks up all of that. But I have my template laid out in such a way that I can take care most times of that ambient noise or that stuff going on in the background. But it's a little more work than it's going to be with a dynamic microphone like those ones I mentioned. Now, if you are watching a content creator and it sounds like studio quality sound, but you don't see a microphone, they're probably using a condenser microphone, but not like this one. They're called shotgun microphones. They're long, skinny, very directional condensers. They have a lot of the same qualities as this. They need phantom power like this microphone. They work the same way, but they're very directional. It's like a beam of sound they pick up. So people point it right where they want that sound picked up and everything else gets rejected. This microphone has a variable polar pattern, cardioid, figure of 8, and omni. Most of the time people are going to be on cardioid, but I really like the way this sounds on figure of 8. And to me, either way, any way I'm using it, it's picking up that ambient background sound. So I have a way to take care of it using gates. A series of gates is the way I do it, to cut out the background noise and keep the stuff while I'm talking to a minimum. You can also use things like Isotope, which is like an AI technology that will cut any interference or background noise from your sound. There's workarounds for everything. If you want to use a condenser microphone, it's probably not going to be the easiest way to do it. But if you want that high quality sound and that top end response from a condenser, you can do it this way. Also, a lot of YouTubers or content creators use USB microphones, which go straight into the computer. For me, this, even though I haven't really tried these microphones, but from everything I hear about them, I have the gear to run into an interface and straight into the computer through my high quality preamps back here in my rack. So that's what I do. But if you're newer to the content creation thing and want to try one of these USB microphones, It's like the interface is on board and you can go directly into your computer this way. Shure makes one. It looks a lot like the SM7B. I think the frequency response or the way it behaves isn't quite the same, so be aware of that. But I'm gonna do a video on the microphones I use to create my music as well. I think this video is touching on all the things I want to touch on. So we're gonna come back with another video about the microphones to create your music, and what I like to use on guitar cabinets and on vocals and on background vocals. And we'll do that in another video. So until then, I'll be back with another video very soon. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, leave me a comment.